Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of Willing the Good, Love, Action, and Healing, the Anthroposophical Society in America's annual conference. We were meant to be in Portland this year, and here we are gathered online. I'm Laura Scapitici, the Director of Programs for the Anthroposophical Society. It's nice to see you all here this morning. I think we have some people that were with us yesterday and a few new people today, so thank you for joining us. We had already a program happening this morning, which is called the Courage to Co-Create, and that was in, I think, workshop room A, and I'm looking forward to hearing how that's been going. Please, in the chat, you can either let us know where you're joining us from in that chat, or you can just say good morning, and if you have a reflection, a one-word reflection from last night, you can also pop that in there. We're actually this morning starting out, Angela Foster, one of the committee members who lives in Decatur, Georgia, is going to share a poem with us. And then Mickey Leach and Dwight Ebob will read the names of those members who have crossed the threshold this year.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm wide awake. I was one of the people in the Courage to Create workshop. So we've been going for an hour now. My blood's pumping. Laura, is it okay if I read it twice? Do we have enough time? Because you know sometimes with poetry it helps. So this is from the poet Rilke. My eyes already touch the sunny hill, going far ahead of the road I have begun. So we are grasped by what cannot grasp. It has inner light, even from a distance, and changes us, even if we do not reach it, into something else, which hardly sensing it, we already are. A gesture waves us on, answering our own wave. But what we feel is the wind in our face. So I'm dedicating it to our friend Patty Smith, who crossed the threshold this year. She shared this poem in Atlanta a few years ago. So thank you, Patty. And a quick note is that when she, this is a translation by Robert Bly. And when Patty printed it out, she actually had a typo in it. And where it says, even from a distance, it changes us. Patty wrote, it charges us. So if you knew Patty Smith and you know alchemy, there's never really a mistake. It's always just a little hint. So I think I'll read it this time with the Patty version. My eyes already touch the sunny hill, going far ahead of the road I have begun. So we are grasped by what cannot grasp. It has inner light, and even from a distance, it charges us. Even if we do not reach it, into something else, which hardly sensing, we already are. A gesture waves us on, answering our own wave. But what we feel is the wind in our face. Thank you. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you. And if you can please light a candle with us, if you have one near you, or light one in your heart. And we're going to move into reading the names of those who have crossed. And we will turn it over to Mickey and Dwight. Just give us a minute. Sorry, just 1 second. Thank you, Angela. That was beautiful.
On mute, Laura.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
No, I already did it.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Thank you. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Angela. Mickey and I are going to read the names of society members who have crossed the threshold since our last annual AGM conference. In past years, when our meeting has been face-to-face, we have all been in the same physical space during this reading of names. And because we always miss a few names, despite the Society's best efforts to generate a complete and accurate list, because we miss a few, we have invited people in the past to speak those names into the space in which we are all gathered. This year we can't do that, and we've discovered from experience that it is not effective to try to duplicate that procedure in a Zoom environment. So we ask that if we miss a name, that you send a chat message on the chat feature, or that you speak the name in your home space so that it will be recognized. The other thing is Mickey and I apologize in advance for poor pronunciations. I'm going to read the first half of the list, and then Mickey will complete the list. Louis Aventuro, Betty Baldwin, Margareta Bornhorst, Margaret Chambers, Hugh Courtney, John Cunningham, John Huber, Reto Kaufman, Robert Kellum, Gertrude Kohler, Carl Levin, John Moses, Norma Neal, Chris Neely, Shirley Pulido,
Richard Reddick, Peter Rizzo, George Rose, Fred Rosenbaum, Olinda Roya, Michelle Sanz Cardona, Hartmut Schiffer, Roger Schultz, Edward R. Smith, Patty Smith, Beverly Soner, Laura Valsi, Pauletta Wadworth Pascal, Frank Cedric, William McCormick. Now I would like to ask that we take a moment of silence and let the names resound. And into this silence, breathe air and light for all those who have struggled to breathe this year. If you would do that 7 times, thank you.
Thank you, Mickey and Dwight, and for all of you for being here to honor those who have crossed and who are working with us now. So we have a big day ahead of us. We have our 2-day themed workshops start today with Harrie Salman, who you will hear in just a moment, and I have the pleasure of introducing, and with Patricia Rubano and Karen Gilrock. You met Patricia last night, and you'll meet Karen right after Harrie speaks today. And then also with Leland Harris and Julia Belgrave, who jumped in and joined us as Western presenters at the last minute after Thea and her team were unable to be here due to the fires. So you choose those workshops on site. All workshops will be recorded, and you will have more opportunities this afternoon to do our topic workshops, one with the Western Regional Council about the mystery of the earth by Ida Wegman, one with John Bloom, finding a just relationship to money, and the last with the Sophia group. It's called Invitation Sophia Working, with Angela Fosser, Hazel Archer Ginsburg, and Deb Abraham Stamati. We also have a CAO, Council of Anthroposophical Organizations panel at 2:30. We hope you will join us to meet some members of that committee of the Anthroposophical Society and hear some of the work we're doing. And then we will have time for some whole group reflection, as well as Portland Eurythmy has recorded a performance for us that we will screen and watch together. And then there's a time for meeting with Laura Summer and I think Patricia Lynch too about the art dispersal. So if you want to meet with them and talk about what an art dispersal is or ask some questions, you can go and do that then. So welcome to day 2. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Harrie. Harrie, you're such a warm person, and we just met last year after the October conference when Frank Dauenhauer mentioned your work to us, and immediately sent me your book, The Social World as Mystery Center. And this book is underlined and quoted and all sorts of things. My notes are all over it because it is such a beautiful book about what's needed in the world right now, and a new edition, though it was written maybe, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago. There's a new edition coming out, and that can be found. We have a link to it on our bulletin board, but it's through Rudolf Steiner, the Dr. Rudolf Steiner bookstore that Frank Dauenhauer runs. So I'd like to just open with one of the quotes from your book, Harrie. But first, I want to say that if it were Harrie reading this quote, he could do it in 12 different languages. And when I asked Harrie how many languages he spoke, I thought, 6 would be a lot. And then he said 12. So this is a person that knows the world and many, many people. And we're so glad to have you here with us. And here's the quote from the book. I think it's page 41. We can hardly imagine how important it may be for people to truly meet each other. Ideals can become conscious in conversation. They can be experienced and turned into impulses. And by experiencing them, impulses can be put into words and expressed in ideas. A consciousness of rights and duties arises in meeting others when our sense of rights is spoken to. And with that, I'll turn it over to Harrie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, we can already open the lecture, and this slide can be removed. Yes, do you hear me well? All right. It is a pleasure for me to speak to you, and also an honor, because not so many people know me in the United States. And it has in fact already been some 20 years ago that I was for the last time on a lecture tour on the Pacific coast. And all these years I have not been speaking to American audiences. I was usually in Eastern Europe or in other places of the world. But now it is a good moment to speak about social questions of the present and also the social questions of the future. And in this talk, I would like to speak about the path to community that Rudolf Steiner gave in lectures in the year 1923, and his path, and there are in fact three different paths to community. One is a religious path, then there is a spiritual path, and there is a social path. The social path is something that goes through the whole of anthroposophy, through the whole development of it, and starting even before Steiner spoke to anthroposophical groups. So it is an ongoing line that with which we can connect when we create our communities. In the first part, I will just ask the question, why do we need communities? How does our society look like? And what is missing there? And in my view, it is really a sense of community. And we have three different possibilities to create this community feeling. So then I will go on to explain the three kinds of community formation that Steiner spoke of. And then in the second part of my talk today, I will look into the future and ask myself, how is this community impulse connected with the mission of anthroposophy? So maybe now we can have a look at the second slide, where I show the content of the first part of this lecture. So I will have a look at the consciousness soul and why we need community in the time of the consciousness soul. And because I'm your guest, I will also speak about the mission of the United States and about the problems of fulfilling this mission. Because as we look at the United States from Europe, America is a divided nation. But I would say not only America is a divided nation, we are all suffering from discontent and inequality and people who are not happy with the way their society develops. And the real issue is, can we get together in communities to find a spiritual mission? So now this can be lifted again. And so yes, it can be removed. So the first thing we have to address today is what is essential for developments of humanity in the consciousness soul period. It began at the end of the Middle Ages with a very interesting experience of people who felt themselves more and more individual. They discovered their personal lives. For example, in the course of the centuries, the need has grown to have your own private room, where in the Middle Ages, everybody was living and even sleeping in the same room. I've seen that myself in Albania, where I was a guest and the whole family of 9 people was first sleeping in one room. And of course, as a guest, I could not be taken into this room. But in these simple houses, they have 2 rooms, one for the family and one for the guests, where the men are eating. And so they offered me to stay there in this guest room, but they could not imagine that I would sleep there alone. So what if somebody from the family had to join me in the night so that I would not feel alone and maybe lonesome. But this is the modern experience, that we want to be alone sometime and that we want to be real individuals and have their own even sleeping rooms. So the consciousness soul is about discovering ourselves, creating a space for ourselves in this individual room that we need, and exploring the world, if necessary, alone, because we are on an individual quest to discover who we really are. And for this individual life, we need space that we take from others. So we want to expand, we need time and space for ourselves. But this can have very extreme consequences, that we compete with others for social space, for money, for jobs, and that the whole of social life becomes a market where everybody is pushing other people away to have more space for himself. In this sense, the development of the consciousness soul may lead to a very extreme form of egoism, an egoism that is reflected in the social philosophy that came out of Darwin's study of nature, where we speak of a social Darwinism in which we are all competitors. But Darwin did not look carefully enough into nature, because later biologists, especially from Eastern Europe, they discovered that there is more cooperation than competition, and that the essence of nature and life among animals is one of cooperation. And this is what we have to discover in the second part of the development of the consciousness soul. We have to see that that it is not enough to expand our own interests and to work for ourselves and to live for ourselves, but that we can also give space so that the others can develop. And then we develop social consciousness. So this is really the issue for coming out of a world of egoism into a world of altruism. But this is, of course, something that should not be pushed into the extreme, that we are only thinking of others. Because if also other people think of others, then people will take care of our interests. And we can take care of the interests of other people. And then we have something of a harmonious society in which everybody can have the space that he or she needs. And in my own life as a social scientist and as a philosopher of culture, I've been going around the world, and I was quite fortunate, and I'm thankful for this good karma that I could visit 80 countries in the world, so that I could see how people live in different cultures with different histories and with different perspectives on lives. So going to other countries has changed my view on myself and of our life in Holland as Dutch people. And I would really invite those Americans who have never been abroad just to make a journey abroad, because this will change your life, and you will discover that there are also other people on this planet who need all kinds of resources that your country is claiming to a large extent for itself. So this is not to criticize your country, because as a guest I'm not allowed so much to criticize my host, but I'm just looking at facts. So the fact is that we are still in a world of antisocial societies and communities, and that we need to find a way to find this transformation that will bring us into the sixth culture. So this present day culture of the consciousness soul is a culture of individual development. But the next culture, which will be located and radiating out of the Slavic world, especially the north of Russia, will bring a new social life. It will bring brotherhood and sisterhood among mankind, so that we will grow into a family of mankind instead of being part of our own small family circle. So this is what we have to prepare. And anthroposophy is also there to prepare this next culture of brotherhood and sisterhood. And it is a challenge, it is a big effort to find the way to this next culture, but people have to prepare it. And those people who meet in anthroposophy, they discover that you cannot create a new culture yourself. We have to do it together, and we must find ways in which we can really work together in a harmonious way. So when I now go to a next point in my presentation, I come to the United States. The United States was created as a new world where things would go differently from what had been happening in Europe. Europe was a continent that was always in war, where territories were divided and contested, and where there was a nobility from the Middle Ages that prevented the rise of a new class, the class of citizens, of merchants, and traders. So people were looking for a new country where there would not be religious persecution anymore that was still everywhere in Europe in the 16th and 17th century. And so when the New World, when America was discovered, there were several groups who made their way to the territory of the present United States. It was in 1607 that a group of English people came by boat and founded Jamestown in Virginia. It was the first English colony on English soil, on American soil. And so they came in these difficult times in which many people died and in which it appeared that they were trying to find a living in a swamp. They came as pioneers to do farming, to expand, to create a prosperous life for themselves, which was not possible in England. And these people came with this wish to create a new land that in the course of time became an empire. This was a special group of people. They were Anglicans. And they discovered that you could plant tobacco in Virginia. And for this, already they brought in 1619 the first black slaves to the United States territory. And this was how how development started, and problems were created that have not been solved yet. So this is one part of America, the America that wants to expand, that wants to prosper. And then a couple of years later, in 1620, there came a group of Puritan Calvinists from England who were persecuted in England because they were Calvinists. They had fled to Holland, where they were welcome because Holland was Calvinist at that time. And they came in 1620 with the Mayflower and founded Portsmouth in Massachusetts. And they had this dream, which became part of the American mission, a second element in this American mission, to create a new life in a land that was for them a promised land. They had a feeling that they were entering God's own country. And that still is the vision of America for many people, that this is God's own country and that God will bless and continue to bless America. So this was the religious element that was brought by the Puritans to the United States as it is now. But there was a third element in the founding of what is now the United States. It was New Amsterdam that was founded in 1625 by people who were not religious zealots like the Puritans. They were not people who were intent on doing agriculture like in Virginia and planting tobacco. They were people who came as traders to buy fur from Indians and to sell it in Europe. And they founded their little colony that did not have really the intention of conquering territories, of expanding to the West. And they created a society that they knew from Holland, a cosmopolitan society in which there was place for everybody. So that in New Amsterdam, there was not only like in one language spoken, English in Plymouth and Portsmouth, Jamestown, but there were 11 languages or 12 maybe spoken in New Amsterdam, so that I would have felt myself at home pretty well there. So it was a multinational society of several thousands of people. from different countries of Europe, working there, doing their business with the Indians, and creating a tolerant multinational society that in many ways is the model after which America developed into an international, multinational country trading with the whole world. And so in some way, this Dutch impulse became one of the basic elements of modern American life. But it also has a spiritual background, which I discovered when I was doing this research into these New Netherlands that became part of New England later. Because at that time, the spirit of the consciousness soul, so not the spirit of Michael, who is the time spirit for 350 years, but also the consciousness soul, so the spirit of 2160 years, as the time spirit. And this time spirit was working for about a century through the Dutch folk spirit, because the consciousness soul spirit wanted to create a universal mission for humanity, for itself, so, and with the goal of creating a global economy. And that is what is essential for the consciousness soul period, that we grow into one world, one global family, where everybody will be dependent on everybody else. And so this is what the spirit of the consciousness soul could realize in Holland for some time. And then the spirit moved with Dutch settlers to New York so that it could be included in this new cosmopolitan civilization that this spirit wanted to establish in the service of Michael. So this spirit of the conscious soul later moved to England, and now it came to the United States. But it is one of several time spirits that are working in the 20th century in the United States. So there is the time spirit Michael, there is a time spirit of the consciousness soul period that wants to unite the whole world into one family. So Michael wants to spiritualize our culture, which is to reconnect it with the spiritual world. There is the good spirit, there is what is called the good spirit of America, the America of the poets, of Emerson, of Whitman, of Melville, that is very much, and Emerson, that is liked very much by anthroposophists. So the good America, and that spirit was brought also from Europe. So it is a link with European culture, this spirit of the poetical and cultural America. But there is also an American time spirit that is in competition with Michael. So it is a dark spirit that created a technological empire and a technocratic empire and a plutocratic empire, so in America. And so this is not really an expression of the real mission of America, because that mission is connected with the ideals of the founding fathers, who wanted to create a territory where there could be political and legal equality, where also natural rights could come to expression, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And there would be popular sovereignty. So these were the three basic ideals that found their way into the mission of America as it was envisioned by the founding fathers. So in 1776, when they created the Constitution. But when we look at this group of people more closely, we see that they were in fact landowners, and that only landowners could vote. And so they created for their own social class of landowners a mission for which they wanted to separate from England. And there is a very special historical law that when you create something, it goes through cycles of 33 years. And after 3 times 33 years, which is a century, then the impulse that you put into life has to be renewed. So it just disappears after 100 years. And there is also something connected with establishing empires. When the Soviet Union was created in 1917, anthroposophists asked Steiner, how long will this last? And Steiner said, 72 years. And so after 72 years, we reached 1989, when the Soviet Union collapsed. So with this idea in mind, as an hypothesis, we can consider if this historical law also applies to the United States and its mission. And indeed, after 72 years after the Declaration of Independence, America was in a big crisis. It was the Civil War. So a new vision had to be created, a new mission had to be created for America. And of course, there was after 72 years an intermediary period of chaos. And in this chaos, the Civil War took place. But the war was finished. It was won by the northern states, and a new imagination of America was created. It was the imagination that led to the Gilded Age, the age of industrialism, the age of rampant inequality. And also this came to an end 72 years later, and we were in the crisis of the 30s, which then gave rise, after the Second World War, to a new order. In 1945, the American Global Order. And now, when we count 72 since 1945, we are in 2017, which was the year in which President Trump came to office. So this is again a time of crisis. In fact, we in Europe are looking at Trump as the gravedigger of the American global empire. And so it is clear we need a new vision, a new imagination, not only of America, but also of this global order. And it is this what I learned from Christopher Schaefer in his book Reimagining America, where he speaks of a new covenant and of a new way of living sustainably, also with the earth. So the mission of America has to be redefined in the coming years. And America has to find its role in the global community again. And it has to find a way to overcome the utter division that is tearing this country apart in a way that we don't even understand in Europe, where we look at a population that is divided in 2 halves, where in the last elections, there has always been almost 50 to 50% outcome for the 2 different contenders. And so for us, and maybe also for those who don't understand the other party, it might be useful as a way of harmonizing this society. Why did people vote for Trump? Or why will people vote for Biden? And why there is not a third choice? So that is really wondering me. Why is there this dichotomy, this polarity? And you can only solve problems when you come to a certain agreement. And for this, you need a middle ground, where we in Europe have at least some civil rights movements, some green people. We have people with post-materialistic values. So where are these people? And I believe there are many of them, and they would be necessary to create social peace in America again. Well, we need something that is missing to create a new vision for America, a vision where people will do the good, will want to do the good, which is the purpose of this conference, to explore this question of willing the good. So where can we start? And where can the Rudolf Steiner help us? This is vision of 3 paths to community. I think it is essential because in many countries there is no sense of community anymore, and we've become too isolated as individuals in our private lives. And so we need to find ways to community. And Steiner offers us 3 ways, which I would now explain, and which then will be discussed and explored and also experienced later today in the workshop. So Steiner spoke about religious community building. And it was a very special situation in 1923 when he was addressing this question, because there were conflicts in the Anthroposophical Society. The Goetheanum had burned down. The society was in a terrible crisis, and there were young people, young members in their early 20s, who could not live with the older generation of anthroposophists anymore. And so this went so far that Steiner, at that time in 1923, had to found a second society called the Free Anthroposophical Society to give space to the young people, because they did not fit into the old society anymore. So this took place around the time in which Steiner gave these lectures called Awakening to Community. So it is really a wonderful cycle that I can recommend to everybody who is also thinking about how to solve crisis in America. So, and especially the 2 lectures, lectures number 6 and lecture number 9, they're essential for what we are doing now. So there was a religious community called the Christian community. And there many people could experience a feeling of community. And it was so important for so many people that there was a feeling of community that they did not find in the members group of the Anthroposophical Societies. That whole members groups left the society and joined the Christian community. But then Steiner had to say, this is not what I wanted. The Christian community is for a special group of people, and there they can experience a special feeling of community, because in the cultus, so in the things that are happening there, in the words that are spoken, and the rituals, people will experience something that they shared together in the spiritual world before they were born. And so people will have an image and a feeling of how they were together, how we were together in the spiritual world before we were born. And this gives a great feeling. Even a more important feeling, as Steiner said, than when we are together with people who speak our own language, or when we are together with people with whom we shared earlier parts of our lives, so that we have common memories. Now, Steiner says, this experience of being together in the prenatal world, the supersensible world, this is what brings us together when we go to a church service and we create a space together in the ritual of the cultus where angels can descend, and the angels connect us into a community. And this gives a great feeling. It's important for people to be not alone anymore. So in a service, you can experience this. But Steiner said this has to be done in a new way, because when the priests and the vicars start giving sermons and give intellectual thoughts to people, then you atomize the congregation. So you must keep them together, and you must avoid intellectual sermons. So instead of offering them intellectual food, you must give them, you must unite them under the wings of the angel. And the intellectual food and they can find this in the Anthroposophical Society. And so there also, the Christian community is not the only space, not the only place where angels are coming down, because in the Russian Orthodox church service and liturgy, you will experience the same. And maybe in a traditional Catholic Mass in Latin, you can experience the same, because the sermon is not important in the Orthodox Church at all, and in the Catholic community, it was very marginal. So this is one kind of community that people need, but there are alternatives. There's at least one alternative for the anthroposophists, Steiner said. And this alternative is that when people are together and they talk about anthroposophy, they can experience community. But at that time, it was still very difficult to achieve that. And for that reason, people ran away to the Christian community. So Steiner was trying to explain in those lectures how a community could arise when anthroposophists are together. And he called this a cognition community. In German, Erkenntnisgemeinschaft. And he explained this such that people come together and they don't talk in intellectual or abstract terms about anthroposophy, but they have to give it life. They have to become enthusiastic about ideas that are important for them. So their heart must open, and they must be happy with their friends around them, with whom they can talk in the spirit of what he called spiritual idealism. So you feel really lifted up into the spiritual world. And there we are together with angels. And these angels are watching us, and they're listening to us, and they want to inspire us. And that is the community that Steiner wanted to create for the anthroposophists in their cognitive cultus, in which people will experience something invaluable. And that is that they awaken, that they wake up in meeting other people, discovering their soul qualities, their spiritual qualities, their inner life. And they will discover who these people in their anthroposophical group really are. And so they will become enthusiastic themselves, and have this feeling that you become another person. You're more connected with your higher self when you're talking with other people with whom you share your spiritual ideals and with whom you can go together a path of soul transformation. So that is the community that Steiner envisioned for the Anthroposophical Society. So where people talk with each other in such a way out of a deep interest that they ask you questions that you've never thought of yourself. And suddenly, in trying to answer this question, you discover something essential for yourself, who you are, part of your mission. And so this is what these young people who came to Steiner in this period, 1923, this is what these young people wanted to do. And Steiner said to them, talk about your ideals, talk about your spiritual experiences, become friends. And he said, create karma, because you will discover in your talks what you want. So something of your will begins to speak, and you find around you the people with whom you want to work together to realize what is living in the depth of your will. And so this, it was for Steiner, the anthroposophy as it was meant to be. So living anthroposophy, where people discover who they are because they are surrounded by other people who have an interest in them. And so this is something so new that 100 years ago, this was for the older generation too difficult. But it became possible for people who were born after 1899, after the end of the so-called Kali Yuga. And so Steiner explained that after 1899, the constitution of people that are born is totally different, that they are more open to the spiritual world, that they are more open to a new reality that had already taken place, which is that humanity had crossed unconsciously over the threshold of the spiritual world. So for these younger people, it was possible to experience that the spiritual world is all around us, that we are in fact in the spiritual world, and that everything becomes transparent, and that it's easier to discover who we are and how the angels are working with us, how Christ is close to us when we suffer. So this is the experience that we can have, and such experiences unite us, unite people in a new community. It is the spiritual community where we work together with other people on our karmic tasks, and where we work together with the spiritual world, which was also something totally new, that spiritual beings and deceased ones come so close to us that we can listen, that we can hear them, and that we can be inspired by them. So that's what Steiner called new mysteries. So new ways to communicate with spiritual beings, and to allow them to work through us as teachers, as doctors, as farmers. So this is already the beginning of the sixth culture. A small beginning, which was difficult 100 years ago, and which failed in many ways. But in the last century, people found, in spite of that, their ways to this new spiritual community. And that is where anthroposophy is totally alive. But then comes another need. The need that we create together activities in all possible fields of culture that have to be renewed. So how do we work together, not as members of a member group, but as teachers in a school, as farmers on a farm, as therapists in a therapeutic center? And for this, we need another kind of community building. It is number 3. It is the creation of a social community. And this does not come automatically once we've become good friends in our anthroposophical circles. For this, we have to discover some basic laws of social life that will enable us to create our communities as centers of vibrant activity, where we are connected with the spiritual world in everything we do, and where we are also connected on another level, on the physical level, with the people around us in the world who need good food, new ways of healing, who need new schools. And so the school community does not only comprise the teachers and the children, but also the parents. And then we already have a much larger community. And so Steiner had this vision in 1924 that these communities that people build in their activities as teachers, as farmers, as medical doctors, and in so many other qualities, that these communities would become oases of a new culture, that they would become islands of a new culture out of which spiritual life would radiate out into this world that is in need of spirituality, but where people cannot find it. They need lighthouses where they can see the new spirituality at work. And so Steiner showed in the way he was creating an anthroposophical community of cultural creatives, so we may call them like that, cultural creatives. So a way in which these people would be able to work together and also to link, to connect with the spiritual world. And this, the different steps that Steiner went with his students, with his anthroposophists, was a movement that already started before Steiner worked for anthroposophists. It goes back to the year 1891, when Steiner told his audience somewhere in Vienna that stories begin with an image, that you need an image to start telling a story. You must have a vision. And so what people want to do together needs a common vision that everybody shares and that gives the inspiration to continue together, even where it is difficult, where there are conflicts. And every 7 years, Steiner made a new step in this anthroposophical social impulse, as I describe it in my book. The second element where we want to create community is that the community is there for us. We are not there to serve the community. The community is meant to serve individual people. So it is about their development, and they are not slaves, but we are together to serve all individuals. So that's important. There is a development path for everybody in a community. The next step Steiner made in 1905, when he was asking about the well-being of a group of people who work together in a community. And he said, people who work together, they generate income together, and they should try to divide it in a just way. And then the well-being of the whole community, the whole group will rise, will increase. Much more so than when everybody only works for his own personal income. So that's the third element in Steiner's social impulse that we need in every community where we achieve something together. We must think about money, and we must be fair and just with money. Another point is that then we have to be able to communicate with each other. And this has become much later the subject of all kinds of therapies, counseling therapies, psychotherapies. How do we really communicate in such a way that we understand each other? And Steiner said, here we have to learn 2 gestures. The gesture of listening, of creating space to somebody else, and the gesture of taking space for yourself, but no longer than is necessary, because the other person then has to create space for us. And so this is a swinging movement of listening and speaking, and of trying to remember what the other person said when we listened. Because maybe this person told us something that he was not really aware of himself. And when we return it to this person, it may lead to his awakening. So we help each other to awaken in encountering each other in a conscious way. And then the next step in community formation is how we deal with power. And this is what social threefolding is about, to create a sphere that is free from power, where power is given to people or to certain people who have certain talents by the community as in the form of a mandate. And this power has to return to the community. And this is what Jefferson called popular sovereignty. So the community is sovereign and it gives mandates to certain people. Now for Steiner, a next step came, but he couldn't realize this step anymore because he died before the year 1926 came. It was the requirement for the success of the Christmas Foundation Conference of 1923. And the requirement was harmonization of karma. And this he said to the members at this Christmas conference. You must harmonize karma, otherwise this meeting will fail. This new society will fail. So harmonizing karma means that you find a way to live with somebody and to work with somebody that you don't like, that you even dislike, that you may even hate. But you must find a way to bring this karma into harmony so that you find a basis for common work. And so we have to accept the other people as they are. We don't have a right to change them. They must change themselves. But they can do this in partnership with others in a community. And so this is about creating conditions to work together so that we become partners in a common project. And so then, when I make a next step, which of course was not realized, to 1933, the second coming of Christ in the etheric. And this would mean that in our communities, we are able to create a vessel into which Christ and other spiritual beings can descend and inspire us. So then our communities become social temples. They become etheric temples because everything what we do together creates etheric connections. So in a community, we are building a temple into which we can meet spiritual beings. So the year 1933 is also not accidental. It is the time when Christ came to help us. And since then, he is there for us to feel his support in the communities that we are creating. So now this was the vision. And I think this vision is important for the healing of all communities where people are in conflict, up to the highest form of community of a whole country, where there are two groups who are in conflict and who cannot work together anymore. So this is the healing of modern life, modern social life, that we learn to discover for us these paths to community. It can be in the religious sphere, where we go back to our prenatal experiences. It can be in the spiritual sphere, where we talk about spiritual issues that are important for us, where we try to solve problems, to make discoveries about how to heal a certain new illness. And then the third way is to create working communities, where we have to accept each other as we are and have to create these vessels into which we can receive the spirit, spiritual beings who want to guide us, who want to help us. And the spiritual world is ready. But in many ways, the human world is not ready. So for example, in 1924, Steiner, when he gave his agricultural course in Kobowitz, Steiner gave a special esoteric lesson to a small group of farmers. And he said, you have the task of improving the soil. You have the task of creating new varieties of food, but also you have the task of working together with spiritual beings. And for this, you should, with your whole farm community, do a common meditation every day at the same time for some period of time. And in this way, you create a vessel so that the spirit of the farm, the angel of the farm, and the angels that will help you to find new varieties of food will be able to support you. So in most farms, this is neglected and people don't even know about this, of this common meditation. But it is something that for Steiner was essential in all anthroposophical communities, to do some common spiritual work, to have some common rituals in which we create vessels for the spirit. So this is the third path to community that we still have to discover in all its essentials, in all its possibilities, because this is a learning process. We are still antisocial people from the first part of the consciousness soul period, and we have to transform ourselves into more altruistic people from the second part of this consciousness soul period, so that we can become in our next life completely social human beings in the sixth culture. So this is for me basic to understanding the present social life, and to find a way to transform it into the social life of the future, in which anthroposophy can become a factor, a principle of healing for culture and for a divided family of humanity. And so this mission of anthroposophy is connected with spiritualizing intelligence. So we know about the Platonic and the Aristotelian people who have to come together. And Steiner had this vision that they would come together at the end of the 20th century. But certainly in the anthroposophical circles, we have Platonic and Aristotelian people, but probably not the leaders of the school of Chartres, not the big ones. They may still come. But the essence is not just that they are there, but the essence is that they work together, so that we can all learn from their cooperation, because the Aristotelian people are more the scientifically minded, and the Platonic people are more open to the spiritual world, and they receive often revelations, but they are much more open and transparent. And the Aristotelians often have a problem to discover the spiritual forces and beings behind the things they study. So they have to work together, so that also we as individuals can unite our own Aristotelian and our own Platonic part of our souls into a new transmuted soul that has these two qualities together. So that is the future of the anthroposophist, to be a Platonic and an Aristotelian at the same time, to have this more Western Platonic attitude and this more Eastern Platonic attitude. And so that is where spiritualization of our intelligence is necessary. And then comes the possibility of creating new communities in all fields of life where they are necessary, where people need them. And so in our community building of anthroposophical initiatives, we have to include the clients, the school parents, the customers, and the consumers, so that what is being created in small communities can expand. And not everybody has to become an anthroposophist. We can create communities with core groups of anthroposophists and other people, and they serve other people in their needs. And so this is how anthroposophy can become part of our society again, where totally other forces are now dominant. So we are not living in a society where Michaelic initiates are ruling our society. We are rather in a society in which the students and initiates from the subterranean school of Ahriman are now in all positions of power and bring us all kinds of inventions and all kinds of power games and all kinds of financial schemes to enrich themselves at our costs. So we are in another kind of society of materialistic and Ahrimanic initiates. And what Steiner wanted to do is offer us an opportunity, a possibility to start a counter movement of spiritualization, of reconnecting with the good spirits, so that our evolution can continue in a proper way. And then we will become part of a network worldwide of islands of culture, in the same way as in the Middle Ages, monasteries were networks of culture spread over the whole of Europe. And so this is what Steiner wanted to bring about, a world in which there would be everywhere centers, communities where people would live with Michaelic inspirations. They would support each other's development and make the beginning, in fact, start the beginning of the new culture of love and brotherhood and sisterhood. So this is what I wanted to present to you in your conference. So my view on the three paths to community in the context of the present social needs of our societies, our countries, and with this vision of why this is necessary to go on this path, which can be a difficult path, to communities of different kinds, because the world needs these communities and needs the inspirations that come from the spiritual world. And these communities are necessary to receive them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Harrie. Wow. Yes, I see people. Okay, so thank you so much. That was really, it took us on a journey there, from Europe to the United States into our own communities and the ways that we create a spiritual culture of love and connection together. So thank you so much. And I just want everybody to know that they can go to your workshop for 2 days and spend more time exploring these ideas with you. And so everyone will get to do that. Tess, maybe you can just unmute everybody so we can say thank you. And then Karen is going to come and we're going to have some biography time together. I meant just open the chat, Tess. That's what I meant. So
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're really grateful.
Thank
you
very
very
much.
Yeah, very special. Thank you.
Really, I wish I could say more right now, and I know people will get to explore with you. And please, on our Padlet, we have the information about your book. And Frank Dauenhauer is here, so you could chat with him about getting the book. And I'm looking forward to more time with you, Harrie. So Karen, I'm just going to turn it over to you for our biography time. And I've got the breakout rooms all ready to go. So.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Wow, that was a little bit of a hard act to follow. Very, very inspiring, and so many wonderful things that connect us all and create a community of wonderful imaginations and ideas. One thing I just need to know, Laura, is how much time do we have right now?
We have 14 minutes.
14 minutes. So this is a very quick sharing.
I think so. Hang on. Have I got that right, Tess?
It says 8 to 10 as the time slot.
Oh yeah, actually maybe we have a
So maybe we have a lot more.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Do,
Looks like it. Tess,
so
Sorry.
that's
do
okay.
you want
Yeah.
to, yeah.
We do. We do. So let's take 30 minutes. And then we can come back for more questions with Harrie too. Does that
Yes,
sound okay?
okay.
30 minutes?
That's great.
Okay,
Yes.
excellent.
All right. So, well, I hope a lot of you heard Patricia's wonderful introduction to biography work is. It incorporates many of the things that Harrie referred to, which is a lot of listening and a lot of hearing whether what this other person is saying might be not only revealing of them, of their truer self, beyond what we just see as an appearance or assumptions we make about the other person, but also who they really are, what they are carrying from their past lives, where they are headed, this much greater picture of what each individual carries, which we of course know from people we know well or wonderful biographies we've read, but everyone we meet carries a whole world within them. So if we can carry that with us as we go into these listening moments with each other. And for those of you who are new today, maybe we will just pull up our guidelines for how we work together before we actually look at what we are going to use as our conversation impetus. So as I said already a little bit, that we come and really with wonder and at the mystery of every human life, which is really such a wonderful thing. And it's a mystery to ourselves. And as we grow older, we gradually begin to unravel some of that mystery, but to learn a bit about the other with respect and compassion. And that whatever we hear, we keep confidential so that people feel they can share openly. But what you share is entirely what you choose. You don't have to share anything you're not ready to share. And this, it's really sort of a sacrifice we make when we listen in this way that we ask you to, where there's no conversation, you're not preparing a response, but you're kind of keeping a very wonderful, open, receptive space into which the words will fall as the person speaks. And you try to, as much as possible, hold back all your, running thoughts and ways that you would have responded if you could, and questions you might have, and disagreements and so on. And if you do have something like that come up in yourself, maybe afterwards you can think, oh, I wonder why I reacted so much to what that person said. What does that say about me? So it's a little bit of self-knowledge as we go along. So thank you, Tess. Now I think we will turn to the actual exercise that I would like you to, the question to take into your meeting the other people. You'll be in groups of 4, so there'll be 3 other people, and you will each have 3 minutes in which to speak while the others listen. And before we go into the groups, we will look at some images, because when we do biography workshops in real life, we love to bring lots of postcards that we lay out on tables, and then we ask people to choose an image that relates to a question or a period of life. And so today we only have 9 images, and they're all to do with healing. We thought we would look at healing today as an aspect of what the whole conference is dealing with, and we've already heard wonderful, wonderful things about the Sophia House, as well as the Angelica Village. Is that right, Village? Angelica? Anyway, that Renata and Carol brought yesterday. But there are many different paths to healing, just as there are different paths to community, based very much on our own biography and on who we are and what we bring from the spiritual world and where we are aiming to go. So let us look at these 9 images that we've selected and see whether there is one that, could we have it a little larger maybe, and you can put me out of the way. Can you expand that, Tess? Is that possible?
I think people just have to, in the corner, there's a little green And they just have to enter full screen and they'll be able to see them more. And I don't think we can move you out of the way.
Fine.
Sorry.
Fine. They just look a little small on my screen.
Yeah, enter full screen. That should help everybody to look more closely.
And so just look at those for about a minute. And I'm hoping that one of them, or even a couple, might resonate with you in relation to the kind of healing work that you maybe have done in your life, are involved in right now, that would like to do more of. In what particular area are you in your own, with what you bring to this world, most comfortably engaged? So take an image that you feel relates especially to you, and then we will go into the rooms, and what you will do there is you will say which one you chose, and then why you did, how that relates to your life and your particular gifts that you bring to a world that needs very much healing, as we all know. So maybe just have a few seconds more, and then we'll go into groups of 4, and we will each have 3 minutes. And please pay attention to the little blue sign that comes to the top of your screen. That indicates that your 3 minutes are now up, and it's time to hand the talking stick to the next person. And if you do that after a little pause, then everybody gets a turn before we return to the full group, which will be done. You'll get a final notice that will say in a minute, you will return to the full screen. Thank you very much. And now we can go into the room. So just click on.
If you just repeat the question, I'll pop it into the chat so people
can. Okay. Which image relates most closely to the kind of healing work that you are connected to in this life?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and I have, it's almost all groups of 4. If you end up with just a couple people, I might move you, but we're gonna try to keep it groups of 4, and then I rotate, I send the notice at every 3 minutes, you said, right, Karen?
Please, yes.
Every 3 minutes, okay, so I need to try.
A little pause. So Laura, if you could give everyone a little pause between the next 3 minutes.
Okay,
yeah, so
great.
It's not boom, boom, boom from one person to the next without a breath. Just a little breath.
I will send pause, and then everybody takes that pause, and then the next person should go. So look for
Lovely.
that message for me. Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yes, I apologize because Laura, I think I realized that I did not introduce myself.
Yes, and I know, and I thought Patricia was introducing you today, so I didn't introduce you, and then, so I'm sorry about that, but I can say a few things about you, if I could, just for a minute, and maybe you can introduce yourself more formally, and that is that one of the best biography sessions I've ever experienced, Karen, we were at the Biodynamic Association of Northern California, and you facilitated us, and my husband was there, and he's really sort of very shy about speaking in groups and sharing things. And he had an amazing experience, and you facilitated the space, and you created these little pauses between talking that I always now incorporate whenever we're doing stuff in group work as the general counsel when we go places and things like that. So thank you. And you are just down the road from me, which is really lucky. So thank you.
And yes, I mean, there's not a whole lot of, I don't have a whole lot of biography credentials except life. And I'm a lifer from Waldorf schools. And ever since I retired from Waldorf work, I have become increasingly interested in learning how to facilitate biography workshops and studying and joining the board of the Center for Biography and learning a lot from my cohorts, including Patricia and Kathleen, me, and so on. So it's just a pleasure to be here and to help a little bit today. And I look forward to meeting some of you later in the whatever we call it, the 2 hour, what is it?
2-day themed workshops.
2-day themed workshop, yes.
Yes, and your workshop is called Practicing Selflessness, Listening to Each Other. That's with you and Patricia, whom we met yesterday. And thank you so much for that. So did you have a wrap up you want to do here in this space, or can we, what you tell me what you feel is next, or yeah.
I think if anybody feels very moved right now to just say something from that experience, maybe if they've not had it before, this would be the moment. And then I think we go on to more questions for Harrie.
That sounds great. So you can just unmute yourself or raise your hand, whatever you're comfortable with. Oh, and Anne wants to see the images again. Tess, could you put up the slides so people could see it one more time? There they are. Nice. Okay, if someone wants to speak, go ahead and you can do that now. Yes, okay, I see Kathy with her hand up. So Kathy, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a wonderful experience in my group with just being reminded how much healing we're all trying to do in the world and have done. And then in looking for myself, looking at these images, I was reminded in how many ways healing can happen, and especially for myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to share? Okay, so I think we can open it for questions for Harrie, and you can either just speak your question or type it into the chat. Is a little easier in case there's a lot for us. But thank you so much, Karin, and thank you all for going into the groups. That's huge. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Laura.
Harrie, did you end up in a group?
No, I was just listening to three people that were sharing stories that were very moving, because they're very close to what I know from my own students who work as therapists. And so they work with art and music and speech and drama, but also biography and supporting people in their lives is a similar kind of talent that you need. And it is a wonderful way of applying anthroposophy in a healing capacity. And in a way, just to serve people and give them the space that they often don't receive themselves. So it is a very practical application of this social impulse of anthroposophy, that there are really people that create space for others, so that they are seen and heard and understood and accepted. So that's part of the new life, the new social life that we need for the future. And so I would also say, when I look at America as a whole, this is a country that is not happy with itself. It has no space to express its wounds. And in the past, Americans afflicted a lot of wounds within their own nation, but also in the world. The different wars, all these policies of segregation, and the landowners who created America for themselves, and they were all slaveholders. And only much later, the people realized that everybody should have a right to vote, not only landowners. And still, so this whole impulse of popular sovereignty of the founding fathers is lost in a world that is dominated by the big corporations who finance the political parties. So there is no way of many Americans, and indeed most Americans, to express their political and cultural aspirations, because it's all about making money and not about seeing where the spirit will bring us if we give it space. In our personal lives, that's easier, but giving it space in a country as a whole. So then you speak about the mission that a country wants to serve, and this mission of America has become very dark. And the real mission still has to be formulated again in this present crisis, a new imagination or a new vision for the task of America and the world is necessary. So I've been studying this in the last year. A year ago, I wrote a book in Dutch. It is about from stolen wealth to shared wealth. So the wealth we possess in our countries was stolen because we don't pay enough to the people who work for us in the poor countries. We ruin Mother Nature and we don't pay money. So the real prices of many products that we buy should be much higher. So the rich people don't pay taxes, so they steal from the taxpayers. And so there is a lot of stolen wealth and we have to share it. And so this is part of the American world order that was created in 1945. And now it's time for a new world order. And we have to be ready for it. Otherwise, the Chinese will impose their world order in a surveillance society in which the totalitarianism will be totally visible to everybody. Now it is still invisible in many situations.
So Harrie, we do have a couple questions coming in if you want to take a few. We have people with their hands raised. Okay, that's great. I'm glad you talked about the stolen wealth too, because it is Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday, which otherwise and is still known as Columbus Day. And so that's another place of the indigenous people of this country too have been, just absolutely decimated by the way that people, when the Europeans came here, what happened. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as well. And there was a question about that, so I thought I would just shout it out. But Marianne, I see you have your hand. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yeah. So thanks, Laura, because that was part of my question. It certainly came up in my small group with a couple of participants mentioning this relationship to the native wisdom that was here on the land prior. And I was thinking about, the native people didn't own land, and yet it was stolen from them. I mean, I've studied a bit of Chicago history and how great tracts of land were just determined, this is mine, when I, as a white person came in. And I just was curious about what you may have come across in some of your research and studies about that aspect of native culture in America and some of the wisdom in the nation states, if you will, of the native peoples and how they organized and governed themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think in the native cultures, and not only in America, also in other countries, you find a high wisdom that comes from real connections with the spirits of the land, the nature beings, the spiritual beings that we are used to call gods. So they express really a way of life that was inspired from the spiritual world. But it was before the time of individualization. So it is the wisdom of the past that fortunately has not disappeared. So we can learn from it. And so this whole idea that the land is private property is connected with individual consciousness. You want to own the land on which you live. But in a pre-individual consciousness, it doesn't matter because the land belongs to everybody, like also the air and the water belongs to everybody. And we in fact are allowed to use it and pass it on to the next generation in the best possible condition. And in the future, we will have to return to this idea of collective ownership and even stewardship. And this we can learn from those indigenous peoples that were so humiliated, and there is really karma, negative karma, that has to be transformed. But there's also something else that is important. Many of those native people of the past, they reincarnated again as modern Americans. So when I look at image photos of American people, in many cases, I can detect a reborn, a reincarnated American Indian. So they are among us, as also those people against war was waged in the past. So they return in a country against which they've been fighting. So many Germans are now born in Russia, and many Jewish people have been born as Germans. So this is the way in which the spiritual world can rectify some crimes of the past, or even find ways to heal old wounds. But what you said is that we can learn from them that we should become stewards instead of owners of nature, and that we must care of nature, take care of nature, as the American Indians did this in a wonderful way. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. Thanks for your answer, Harrie. I'm wondering, Sandra, do you still have a question there? You had your hand raised? Nope. Okay. Sandra is one of the other amazing biography workers we have here. We have so many questions in the chat right now. We just probably have time for one. So what I'd like to encourage everybody to do, Tess, maybe you can pop the community@anthroposophy.org email in there, and we can get these questions to you, Harrie. So here's one. There's the last one, and from Vanya. Harrie, what insight can you lend to us here in the United States as we look towards the few tumultuous months ahead, where both political questions and questions of racial and social inequity are so much at the forefront? So, you know, we have the election coming up next month and all of this. What insight do you want to lend us, if you have a nugget, for the next few minutes of our time before we break and go into our workshops?
No. Well, as I had hoped to be in Portland right now, I would have also planned and hoped to be in New York on election day. So on a tour through America, but I have to miss this tense, I would even say, warfare between two parties, and that both of them don't really represent the interests of the American people. They represent certain other interests, and they use the American people just to vote for them. So what really is important for America cannot find expression in this political system. So you would need another political system, or at least a third party that tries to formulate what lives in the soul of American people. So this urgency to overcome segregation, to overcome the inequality that has been deepening and deepening, and nobody takes care of this. And America is a country in debt, and the debt people or the government takes is in fact money that comes from the future, because other generations, later generations, have to pay it back. But in practice, probably this will never happen, because the system will break down at a certain moment, because there is too much borrowed money. So what's my vision is, for the next weeks, is for America, count on the spiritual world, because there are people who are open to spiritual guidance, and they are the new community builders. And so out of this chaos and divisiveness in the country, something good may come out, because people understand that this cannot go on much longer anymore. So the spiritual world is there, ready to help to create a new America. But people must wake up and realize that by accepting this system, you continue your suffering. New ways have to be found, and there is this earlier tradition in America of self-government, of self-reliance, of cooperation, and there is such a goodwill and such a generosity and such a good-heartedness in the American people that I just don't understand this as a European, that this cannot appear in public space on the level of the nation. So this is just a mystery that the American dream that has been interpreted as a materialistic dream, it should become a spiritual dream of a new country with a spiritual mission. So this is what should come out of all the goodwill and the generosity of Americans. And anthroposophy is there to support this process. And we shouldn't be too much, I would say, involved in a political conflict that is not our conflict. It is a conflict of the past created by negative karma of people who ruled this country, your country, for their own benefit. So it is a system that at one moment has to understand that it can no longer rule the world.
Harrie, thank you so much. And I know if people want to have more questions with you, please email them to us and they can come to your workshop, which is in 30 minutes.
Yes, and I can answer emails if you send them to me.
That's great. We will do that. And
yes.
Thanks again for the inspiration. And yeah, and you can all say goodbye. And we're going to put the in the chat right now. Or actually everybody that's part of the full conference should take a look at the resource guide and you'll know which workshop to go to. You just click on the link right next to the workshop name. So here's the program. You just click on the link. If it's not on paper, you can do that and go to the next workshop room, but you don't have to do that for another 28 minutes. So yeah. So go ahead and thank you so much. And if we can just unmute everybody to say goodbye until we see you next, Harrie.
Thank you,
so
Harrie.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Harrie.
Harrie.